Have you ever had a junk drawer? Or how about a closet? A room, a garage filled with stuff, just stuff that you no longer need. The stuff is there. You look at it every day. Every time you pass it by, you just look at it. And you know you need to clean it out, but you never quite get around to it. So the junk drawer continues to accumulate more stuff. And what we cling to really says a lot about our state of mind. What we can't release physically, we are challenged to release mentally. One author described our mind as the image of a muddy pond or a dirty mirror when we are cluttered by distractions. Author Paula Hudson described how she and her husband in their later years built a smaller uh, house to move into from their very large house on their large property. In fact, it was only about 925 square feet. She described this new space on 4 acres of wooded land as filled with lots of windows to provide a more feeling of openness and space. And it was their desire to live more simply in their later years, as well as they wanted a place where they would felt more connected to God. As she puts it, in the house that was just under 1,000 feet, there wasn't much space for a lot of junk. In fact, in their old house, there were lots of places where junk was found. There were items long since forgotten, stored in spaces and places that no longer served their original purpose. Difficult choices had to be made as they decided what to move and what to leave behind for her daughter and their family. One day, her husband pulled out his junk drawer from the nightstand, and left the stand. The stand was being left behind, and he walked down about 300 yards to their new home and set the junk drawer on the floor next to his bed. She said it stayed there for several weeks, and then all of a sudden, one day, it mysteriously disappeared. Paula was elated. After all, his squirreling days, she thought, had finally come to an end. In the 3rd and 4th century, there were thousands of new Christians who were leaving Israel and moving to the deserts in Egypt and Syria. They were on a quest for a purity of heart. What they understood most was that physical items are never just themselves, but rather symbols and reminders of what we must be willing to relinquish. A classic junk drawer is the repository for what we have meant to leave behind. There we find old corks, paper clips, scraps of paper, rubber bands twisted around coupons that have long since run out of date, and that for some reason we have clung to them. Or then there's the paper bag stuffed deep in the back of the closet with Christmas ornaments that you totally forgot about and a flannel shirt that no longer fits. Sound familiar? As Hudson puts it, when we clean out the clutter and the junk, we're beginning to tear through the sticky web that binds us to our past, not only to the fine and happy times, but the poignant seasons of growth and change, but also to the tears we once shed, the idols we once worshipped, the myths that we once believed, and the lies that we once told ourselves. Much like the junk drawer, when our mind is overburdened with clutter, we have no space for love. So just what is clutter? Webster tells us that clutter is to fill or cover with disorder things that impede movement and reduce effectiveness. When our mind is filled with useless stuff, it impedes our mental forward movement and reduces our effectiveness. So just what can clutter our minds? How about anger? Maybe a little hate or judgment? And then there's also fear and worry, regret, just to name a few. Our mind cannot create positivity when it is cluttered with useless energy, and our thoughts are energy. Depending upon which study you choose to believe, the psychologists tell us that the average person has 2,600 thoughts per day. Now, I did the addition and the subtraction and the multiplication on this. That's an average of 256.3 thoughts per hour, or 4.3 thoughts per minute, or one thought every 15 seconds. And that includes our sleeping time. So if I excluded that, it would even be greater. Now, if you believe some scientific studies, they tell us that 70% of those thoughts are negative. So every hour, 179.4 of your thoughts are not filled with joy, love, happiness, and other positive thoughts, but rather anger and frustration and hate and judgment and negative thoughts. The mind is in constant thought process. And when we're in the space of thinking angry or hateful thoughts, we have no space for love. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, reminds us in the Science of Mind text that things are ideas in form. What else could they be? There is nothing from which to make things except our thoughts and our ideas. Charles Fillmore in the Revealing Word states that the thinking faculty is the inlet and the outlet for all of our ideas. It is active, zealous, impulsive, but not always wise. Ideas are our thoughts which take form. When we are consumed mentally with anger, for example, there is no space or place for love to enter. Why? Because we keep crowding out positive thoughts with the negative. When we're willing to clear out what is not needed in our thought process, we make space for what wants to come in instead. Notice I said for what wants to come in. Love, joy, peace, happiness always wants to be the positive energy within us. Author Carol Truman states, when negative feelings are not resolved as they occur, these feelings remain very much alive in our physical energy field or our body, and those feelings affect each day of our life. In other words, unresolved feelings, buried alive, never ever die. We can only carry those thoughts in our bodies, but also in our minds. Just look at the information contained in Louise Hay books as she shares how the energy of our thoughts and mind create diseases within our body. Here are just a few examples of possibilities. Cancer, caused by deep hurt, long-standing resentments, carrying hatreds. Those are just a few for cancer. Or constipation, refusing to release old ideas, stuck in the past. Or knee problems, stubborn ego, inability to bend, fear, inflexibility. Hay cites several other emotions associated with specific diseases and physical challenges. We can change our feelings by changing our thinking. Remember the old science of mind adage or saying, change your thinking, change your life? So just where did our feelings come from? When we were just babies, feelings came first when we had no other way of expressing what we needed or what we wanted through words. We spent our infancy and childhood experiencing what we were unable to express to our adults, our parents, our teachers. There were long-standing feelings that we carried forward and naturally became registered in our DNA and subconscious part of our mind and our body. These feelings carried forth for years are what cause us to react in our life the way we do today. It's like our mind gets stuck on a given feeling, much like a CD that's scratched, ends up, the CD can't move forward, it can't move back, it can't be read, and so it just makes a funky sound, wah, 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 wah. And those 70% negative thoughts are the feelings and emotions we're talking about that get stuck in our mind. We can change our thoughts, which is in turn can change our feelings and our actions in any given situation. However, if the thoughts are caused by unresolved, deep-seated feelings, our thoughts will reoccur time and time again unless we decide it is in our highest and best good to resolve the core feelings. Remember, every thought, every feeling, every emotion, and every belief that we have has its own set of vibration. They have also been recorded in our DNA. Negative vibrations, which are fear-based, create a heaviness within us. Positive vibrations, which are love-based, create a lightness within us. If you have had more negative vibrations than positive throughout your life, you will feel an absolute imbalance somewhere within your very being. When negativity becomes overbalanced, something will surely happen to make us aware that we are out of balance. This is typically when a major illness comes along. This is our moment of change. This is the time to clear out the junk drawer. It's the time to remove those 70% negative thoughts and make way for healing love. Romans 12:2 states, "Do not imitate the way of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, that you may discern what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." And just what is the perfect will of God? That you will live a life of abundance, happiness, and love. Some of us are health fanatics. We keep tabs on our blood pressure and our pulse, and maybe you might even have one of those digital things attached to your phone so you can see your EKG across your phone. We walk 2 to 3 miles a day, 4 or 5 times a week. We regularly shop at the health food store because, after all, we want organic because that's good for our body. And yet, when it comes to our mind, our thoughts, we shy away from changing, from being healthy. When was the last time you meditated 10 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week? When was the last time that you watched the pulse of your thoughts and chose to stop the negative vents that were bubbling up and passing through? When was the last time that negative thoughts came forth and you mentally or out loud said, "Help me, God, release these thoughts of anger and frustration"? You may think you're healthy physically, but how about your mental state? Is it healthy too? Do you want to change? Do you really, really, really want to change? Do you want to shed those negative thoughts and those feelings? Do you want to clear the junk drawer of your mind? Would you like to feel love and overflowing from within? Then there's no time like the present. When you first wake up in the morning, before you even get out of bed, what is your first thought and first feeling? Those first feelings will set the stage and the tone for the remainder of the day. More than likely, if your feelings are centered on frustration and anger for something that you've been carrying for the last 2 or 3 days, this is how the rest of your day will go. You've set the pace first thing in the morning. If, however, you awake with a positive affirmation, knowing only love and joy will come that day, chances are high that the 70% negative thought process will not transpire. Next, we must be willing to take responsibility for our feelings and emotions. Nobody, for example, can make you angry, just like no one can make you feel inferior without your consent, according to Eleanor Roosevelt. It is your choice. You make the decision as to what you will feel. First, understand, however, those feelings may be the automatic responses that you learned as a child when you were unable to express your true feelings. So now, as an adult, you have a decision to make. Will you clear out the negativity? Or will you allow what is anchored in your DNA to continue to pull you under? Dr. David R. Hawkins, who is both a PhD and an MD, indicates in order to facilitate healing, it is essential to understand the relationship between the body, mind, and the spirit. As he explains it, the body has no way of experiencing itself. The arm, for example, cannot experience armness. I thought that was kind of funny. He also said your leg can't feel legness. I thought that's kind of funny. We experience the sensations of the body. However, sensations also have no way of experiencing themselves. We can only have an experience in something greater, which is our mind. And of course, the mind cannot experience itself. Thoughts, feelings, and minds all have to be experienced in something greater. The principle is that each thing is experienced from an energy field that is less limited. Mind is experienced because of the energy field of consciousness itself. Consciousness is experienced as awareness, and vice versa. Because of awareness, we know what is going on in our consciousness, not necessarily our subconsciousness. If you truly want to release mental clutter, that which is standing in your way from healing, moving forward, knowing love, here's a few steps that you can try. First, stop trying to make other people wrong. In America today, we are obsessed with making others wrong so that we can be right. We need only look at the situation the last couple of years with COVID, our political system, or even our beliefs about God to know that America is obsessed with winning or losing. And they truly want to be right so that we can win. Next, identify the negative emotions, experiences, or feelings you're wanting to release. We did that this morning in the meditation. Once you've identified the emotion and feelings, stop trying to resist the sensory experience of it. Allow the sensations to come through. Remember, you are safe. No harm will come to you. And as you release the names you have given, the emotions, the experience, welcome what you are feeling. Then allow yourself to cancel the belief system that is entangled with the emotions from the previous experience. Finally, after clearing, choose love, divine love, which is the source of all healing. Just imagine what you would feel like if your mind was uncluttered. How you would feel all day long. Just love. In God Whisperer, Karen Kendar shares a story about how one day she sat waiting for her lunch companion. She was on a tight schedule, and this lunch companion always showed up late, and so she paced back and forth between the parking lot and the restaurant looking for her, and finally decided to go in to the cool restaurant. She was in Florida, the cool restaurant, rather than waiting outside. After about 30 minutes, her friend showed up with the usual, "I'm so sorry I'm late." Karen was still, however, excited to tell her about the forgiveness class that she was taking, and so she forgot the fact that she had been late. And her friend listened politely, but Karen could tell by the look on her face that she was not in total agreement with the concept of agreement and what she was learning. Finally, Karen looked at her and said, "What's wrong?" Her friend paused for a moment and finally said, "You know, my mother was murdered." And Karen had known that her mother had been murdered, but she never explored who or how or what or whys of it. She felt that Susan, her friend, would share with her when she was ready. "Well, it was my father," she said, "who killed my mother." Her friend Sue continued, "He's sitting in prison with cancer. He wants to see me. I struggle between the thought of seeing him and never seeing him again. Do I forgive him before he dies? Is it possible to forgive him?" Slow to respond, Karen began with the typical cliches about forgiveness. And then she stopped and she looked at Sue's eyes that lacked complete and total emotion. "Can you continue to live in anger?" she asked. "I'm sure he is less affected by your anger than you are, but what does the anger do to you?" Sue replied, "When anger overpowers me, I feel as if I have relinquished my power and I'm no longer in control." What Karen began to realize was that there are acts that are inexcusable. There are behaviors that are not to be condoned. But we shouldn't allow the truth to keep us angry or fearful. Anger and revenge are destructive, and we are born to love. Sue and Karen continued to talk about the situation for several months to come. Karen reassured her that she didn't need to reestablish a relationship with her father. What she did share, however, was that forgiveness is the act of kindness towards yourself. Everyone deserves a life without fear or anger. There are greater things than anger to feel. The story did not say if Sue ever visited or forgave her father. What we do know, however, is that forgiveness calls us to give away anger and frustration and resentment, which are things that clutter our mind. When we're willing to surrender, our hidden hurts, our unhealthy emotions are free to let love guide our life. So think of a moment of the clutter that may be residing within you. Will you choose to carry what hurts and harm you in that junk drawer of your mind? Or will you experience and know the love you were meant to be? This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours. And so it is. Helen?